guess quite recently. I hadn't really thought about it that much in my earlier days of playing games and thinking about what does this experience of playing games mean artistically. But the more I've thought about that lately, specifically with regard to how am I going to create a game where you can wander and experience these feelings of gameplay meaningfully, it comes down to that question. Why exactly is the player enjoying the long contemplation? What is it that's making this activity so creatively beneficial or creatively... What is it that makes it like a start activity or a stop activity? What makes it a float or a I'm sitting still resting? What makes it restful or floatful? Either of those things have, I think, a similar benefit in the way that I utilize games as a creative person. There is both aspects, and I think very, very good gameplay somehow manages to hold both up. It holds up the feeling of stopping and resting, as well as the feeling of going and of being jump squared, as it were, encountering things you don't expect that are giving you happiness and joy. So I don't know the answer. I can't claim to know the answer to that inquiry. I'm revealing the question as basically the checkpoint of where I am at in the process of pondering game making and pondering my role as a meditation game maker or a meditation stream maker, any kind of maker whose intent is to create something awesome so that people can experience it. Because one of the most practical lessons in Zen contemplation or Zen approach to anything is that what value is. What does value mean? How can I determine what is valuable and make use of, not only determine, but make use of what I determine? And the answer is that there's a value to an activity in itself, not to the dividend, the yield of the activity, but the actual steps in the motion, your actual stepping, the steps in the dance, the syllables in the conversation. Each individual motion or node in the action has a value, has a health benefit. So I have another comic from Raymond Nazer, which is actually a picture of the darkroom. It's a cube. It's a cube with black walls, and his character is in the middle with a colored painting. And the caption on this comic is 100% where my message is, that crafting is a medicinal act. It's a healing act. And so Zen basically takes you to that secret immediately at the very, very beginning. Zen is saying, here's the secret. It's right there in front of you right now at the very beginning of the game. You already have it. You already know how to do the epic thing, and you already can do it. All you have to do is understand that that's what you're doing, that you're not going to acquire something you don't have now. You just need to use what's there right now. You need to actually apply it and take the motions that are in essence holy or in essence completely perfect, or like you are already as you are right now. You already are the Buddha. You're not trying to become one. You just are one. That's basically what Zen is saying in the artistic sense, in the creativity sense. It's the creation's right there already. It's right in front of you. You already contain it. So all I'm doing when I want to make gameplay is to find the experience that I already have. So when I started thinking about that, I realized that the darkroom is a place I entered long before I realized that there's an OS in here, and the OS itself drives a whole game called the Zen Paradox. So when I create a playable version of the darkroom for you to feel those feelings, or for any player to gather this information that I have slowly gathered, it's going to be a fucking slow walk. It's going to be a whole entire contemplative activity that you go along and do. And there's not, to a certain extent, there's not a perfect way I can present that activity to you in a way that you will not interpret as overly repetitive or requiring you somewhat arbitrarily to engage in a very drawn-out repetition of activity. But the whole companion interaction thing that the game will contain, so you can interact with characters in this mythos and ask questions and converse, in essence, is, I think, the main thing that's going to convert what's originally your first 1 hour walk up through the room into something that you're going to deeply enjoy when you start interacting with narrators and with companions in these situations on your way up. And when you discover the layer where the interaction has become something more than just walking up each step of the climb, the reconciliation of that feeling with the original contemplative action that took you there, that was kind of the prerequisite to the one that has the companion interaction in it. The relation of those two means that the experience in this game is necessarily slower than other games, but in such the way that the feeling of its levels being so large and literally requiring a non-skippable long path, to where if people were to be encouraged to speedrun, there would be some meaningful aspect of that is, well, you're not necessarily trying to 100% this level on your way up in the speedrun, but you are trying to, as efficiently as possible, walk along the nodes of motion that it presents to you, whilst covering all of them in a way that allows you to complete the stage without having to stop for any optional standing still. So it basically has to offer you an interchange between stand still and progress, without forcing your progression to be extremely slow. If you're choosing progress, let the player do that. Let the player continue onward if that's what they want to do. It's just, let's walk all the way through this. So I'm still working on this idea of exactly how this would work, how I could even do this, like how doable is this in the sense of programming, to observe a player's intended pace and kind of let them go faster if they want to, but to not assume that that's what they want. How do we interpret what the player wants to do without overly planting a desired or a preferred way, but while still kind of clearly intending a particular way, with offered, here's alternate places you could step onto, and they didn't really do anything for you other than changing the way your view looked, etc. Providing optional stepping points and ones that were the absolutely essential ones. If you were to just click to the next node over and over, that would be one path, and then here's a bunch of optional nodes you didn't choose along the way, but you might want to choose next time. That's the core, I would say, the core variation inside of this kind of gameplay. So that I'm not forcing you to take 10,000 steps just to complete the dark room, but I could present a 10,000 step path to the dark room, which might somehow be way, way more enjoyable if you're a slow player like I am. Do I necessarily want you to enjoy it as much if you take the less steps path? Yeah, I want you to have the game carry you into the enjoyment you're trying to be carried into. It's kind of like the metaphor of sailing in wind. So I want to create the wind, and then you have a variety of different ways to try and catch it and ride in it, essentially. And Journey does such a good job of having that, because you're allowed to level up your flying power, and then you're further able to get different flying power charging if you specifically go to player and you plan to play with somebody and you align with them and get in the same place. You can play that game particularly enhanced by flying two-player. So I want to incorporate that feeling of allowing the player to approach areas that are clearly approachable, but that maybe aren't obviously approachable by the intended path. There has to be a variety of locations which you can see that aren't obviously approachable, but that appear to contain some kind of an approach that you're going to need to learn how to get to, how to reach it, in essence. Optional nodes versus the literal nodes that are going to carry you up to the, I would say, the intended end point of the level, the place where you finished the level and you've completed the walk through it. Those items are going to be clearly aligned. It's not going to be completely open where there's no definite start and stop point. Because the thing is, for long distances to work in gameplay, I have to provide stop points where okay, you're not allowed to quick load a different place somewhere in the game. Where you are is where you are. But a stop point is what allows you to be in the place that you've gone to and stay in that place and not have to be like, well, I have to close this game session, save and quit. And so next time I play, I have this whole 2 hours of gameplay that I just took to get to this point, and then whatever else I want to do. Because it wouldn't make sense to make the whole game roguelike and make you start all the way at the very beginning if you want to play. So there has to be stop points that are far enough apart that there's some kind of a meaningful traversal to see corners of the game that are between those points. Basically the checkpoint and the motion, the nodes of motion between the checkpoints have to be clearly delineated so that I can allow the player to feel the feeling of a long contemplative walk across the stage, and then choosing, okay, so do you want to restart this stage or do you want to checkpoint here? So like you could pause this gameplay session and come back, and you would still be here where you checkpointed instead of rolled back to the very beginning of the stage. So let's say you do that and you then decide you want to start back at the stage. At that point, there's not necessarily a stage selecting mechanic, but there is the restart the game type of an ability. And I'm still working out how am I going to delineate that restart idea from, well, here's the beginning, here's where you start this level, here's its normal ending point, and here's other checkpoints that exist after you access other layers of the level of the game. You necessarily are going to have other checkpoints where you went to like corner 3, the third place in this level that is not the end point or the start point, but it's somewhere else, way, way, way far off, 200 steps along this other place. So eventually you're looking at like the carving of paths into what seemed like invisible barriers to begin with. The further and further you get into a level's information advancing, as it were. The more you learn in traversing the level, the more possible long treks into other corners of it that begin to exist, until eventually you discover what I would consider to be the ultimate boundary escape, to walk on top of the entire level, or completely canvas exiting out the boundary of it. Which I would say is probably going to be the most challenging area to find in any given level, but where sometimes you might accidentally be granted access to it, even though you didn't find the official entryway. The game may have a randomization aspect where a glitch occurs and you suddenly have been able to exit the boundary that you didn't clearly discover what was its intended exit point, but nonetheless you have exited. So very, very, very long contemplation maps, I think, lend very, very well to this, for me to present you with an intricate maze-like place that contains so many more dimensions of walkability than you realize. And so upon realizing them, that's where the mystical feeling kind of is. That's the jump square, when you have the experience in the gameplay that just kind of opens up the top of your mind and just mystifies you. That's basically what we're trying to do in a meta adventure with the second person mode. In order for that to be super.
The integrated in such a way that if I not only has the difficulty in grasping, but there is difficulty even for the organized one. The integrated in such a way that if I need to know it better.
Basically, how the game can be both exciting and slow and contemplative is the jump square. Jump squares is the way that happens, and Stanley Parable got really, really good at offering that to a player who wanted to keep on trying all of its different areas, different ways. Basically, you had to already want to in order for that to be super compelling, but that's the question underneath all the gameplay I'm going to explore.
The totality of selection by a sweeping motion, like the glance of our eyes. Well, it takes time to glance of our eyes and register what's there. You want to remember it constantly. So what we're saying is that the intelligence of the system is more intelligent than any individual consciousness. But of course, as a living organism, you are much more conscious in this scanning. you certainly don't erase it. That's something that you grow. Or we could put it this way, that the intelligence of the everybody knows what it is. It's very easy. Like you know what love is. Just like you know what peace is. You can see self-intelligence. What we call an orderly arrangement of different functions. But again, we're using words, all of which are precise. We're using order. That's saying it's all in order. It's almost like saying we recognize it, but we're not quite sure what we recognize in the front. And for example, if we begin with the pure hypothesis that we ourselves are intelligent, let it go at that. If we are not, then nothing. But let's, for the sake of argument, let's say we are. Now, if that is so, then the environment because we are objects. And I don't feel like I can have the intelligence. Sometimes but most of the time, by which policy, which plan, which methods of reproduction, all of these best relations are the without which not sine qua non of there being blood and veins and bones and intestines and all that kind of thing. That's only the bacteriological. But the insects are using them. Yeah, the good side. Because Absolutely above the right line. Because we have lots of problems. And so verbs of expression are mutually and especially love have an arrangement with each other whereby one could say of flowers. But although they look very different, they are one and the same. Flowers, bud, and fly around. But you can't have the bud stuff. And so you can construe the relation between every single kind of object. On and on and on. It's such a that what you call your mind intelligence, your very brain body, is utterly involved with this network of other kinds of organisms and existing at a certain level, in a certain level, which could only be found in certain kinds of states. Now then, we should give every technology because we can't go running to that situation unless we know very well how do you penicillin without destroying all the factors? I can build them up. So this is why in the Taoist Chinese and the relationship they set up fundamentally non-interference, not quite what we like. That is to say, when you act on you must, you can't help it. There's no way to isolate it. Every time you breathe, you interfere. But the art of Wu Wei is that when you interfere, endeavor to do so by going with the grain. Otherwise, it's called a stiff wood, sitting with the grain. You don't have to do it properly. And likewise, when you want to take a bite, don't use violence. Use the other person.
of the court, and he is making
with my actual ear.